This video was brought to you by the ILC. Hello there once again. Welcome back to our Exam 1 review series. This time we'll be doing problem 16c, where we are asked to find the domain of this function, square root of 2 minus x divided by x squared plus 3x plus 2. There are certain rules about domains we should go over briefly before we begin. First, the rule about domains with square roots is that the inside of the square root must be greater than or equal to 0. The second rule, the denominator of a fraction cannot be equal to 0. And the third rule is that roots in the denominator must be strictly greater than 0. It is possible to have more than one of these situations at once. For example, we do have a square root on the numerator of this fraction. This is subject to the first rule. However, we also have a denominator, and that's subject to the second rule. So this problem will be done in two pieces. In part 1, we'll find the domain of what's inside the root. In the second part, we'll find the domain of this denominator. We'll then see where those two domains overlap to get the domain of the function. Let's begin with part 1, the things inside of the root. We'll use rule 1 and say that 2 minus x is greater than or equal to 0. First, we move the 2 to the other side by subtracting 2 from both sides. We now have negative x is greater than or equal to negative 2. Now, we need to multiply both sides times negative 1. Now remember, when you do this, you will invert the greater than sign, and it becomes less than. So we now have x less than or equal to 2. We can now begin drawing a graph of the domain. We'll begin with the number line as usual. We will place negative infinity and infinity on the arrows. Let's also mark the 2. Because it is equal to, we will use closed circles in that part. So, closed circle here at 2. Everything less than 2 is okay, but everything that is not less than 2, everything that is greater, is excluded from the domain. So the numbers to the right of the 2 will be excluded because they're greater. So we'll X those out to show that they are not going to be part of our answer. With this taken care of, we move to part 2. In part 2, we look to the bottom of the denominator. We see x squared plus 3x plus 2 is not equal to 0 because of rule 2. Now, when you have a second power inequality, you must factor it. So we draw two parentheses, and we think of two numbers that can multiply to positive 2. But the only numbers that I could think of are 2 and 1. And since the number in the middle is positive, we'll use positive 2 and positive 1 not equal to 0. We will now need to solve both pieces of this equation. We'll have x plus 2 not equal to 0, and x plus 1 not equal to 0. If we solve the left equation, we'll have to subtract 2 from both sides. We now have x is not equal to negative 2. Before we go on, let's take care of the second part. We must subtract 1 from both sides. Now, if the negative 1 and positive 1 cancel, we'll have x is not equal to negative 1. Now, since these are not equal, they will be open circles. So we'll place an open circle at negative 2 and an additional open circle at negative 1. These will create breaks in the domain. Therefore, we will have three pieces in our solution: piece A, B, and C. Piece A will go from negative infinity to negative 2. Union piece B, which goes from negative 2 to negative 1. union -1 to 2 for piece C. In piece A, we have infinity, which is parentheses every time. We have -2, which is open, which will be parentheses also. For piece B, on the left and right, we have two open circles, so those get parentheses as well. For piece C, -1 is open, but +2 is closed. So -1 gets parentheses, and +2 gets a square bracket. So those three pieces make up our domain. -infinity to -2, union -2 to -1, union -1 to 2. And that's how we find the domain of a complicated looking function. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again soon.